That's it. I think we've started. Yeah, because I can see the participants coming in. Excellent. Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Thomas Newman of Viva Financial Tuition, and I'm gate crashing Laura Winkworth's first August 22 SCS session. So Laura's going to talk you through some slides, and there'll be time for question and answer at the end of this session. The session is being recorded, and the recording will be sent out to you on Monday. So before Laura starts, and this is a free session, I'm going to talk to you about the best course option we have for the SCS if you're sitting this exam in August. It's called the SCS Elite course, and Laura is the tutor for that course. It's an excellent option if you're looking to do well in the exam. So I'm going to share that course detail with you now. So okay, there we go. Laura, can you see that?
Yeah, we can see it fine.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is the first session for our August course, and as I said, this is a free session. So feel free to share the recording with anyone you think might benefit from it. But the remaining sessions that take place and the remaining parts of this course, mock exams, etc., are not free. Okay, so you need to purchase one of Viva's course options to avail of that content. So as I said, the SCS Elite course is our lead SCS course. So it's the most involved course we have. And I'll send you out this link afterwards. Basically, I'm going to describe what's included in that course over the next 5 minutes or so. So this course, the way you book your place is by paying a £99 deposit, and the normal price is £699 total. So you pay the £99 deposit first, and then you've got £600 of balance to pay over 6 months. So we like to offer students the possibility to pay the installments over a 6-month period. What we're going to do today is we're going to drop that price to £599. So to book your place on the course, you pay £99 today, and you have £500 remaining that you can pay over 5 months. Okay, so it'll be £100 a month starting next month. So it's a very comprehensive course. You have a lot of contact time with your tutor, Laura. There are mock exams, there are 5 of them. They include model solutions as well, and crucially, they include marking too. You've got live workshop sessions with Laura. They're 2 hours each. There are 6 of those, so 12 hours of workshop time with Laura. They're very exam-focused sessions. You'll be doing mock debriefs. So all of the 5 mocks that you sit, there will be a debrief session after you sit that mock with Laura. I'll let Laura talk a little bit about her own background in a minute, but suffice to say that she's an absolutely fantastic tutor, and our students absolutely love her. Okay, so let's get into the detail then. You'll see that there is a syllabus included here of the different components of the course. So we have this pre-course work that we recommend you go through. So this is a series of recordings on different topics. So we've got today's session, a roadmap for mastering the August 22 pre-scene. So that's a live session. The recording will go up on the website after this is done. You have a series of videos on E3, F3, and P3 where you review those theories at a high level. So very, very useful to get a quick review of that content. You may be a little bit rusty on that. There's a series of videos on preparing for the case. So with these videos, you consider your role as a senior manager, how to make use of the pre-scene materials, how to apply theory correctly, etc. There's another series of videos on exam day strategy. So in this series of videos, you'll be thinking about what you do on the day of the exam. What is the examiner actually looking for, and the traps to avoid, the easy marks that you can win. Then we're into the heart of the course from weeks 1 through to 6. Okay, and over this 6-week period, There will be a mix of on-demand content that is already on the website, vivatuition.com, which you will unlock if you purchase this course. So there is a series of videos covering the entire pre-scene done by Laura. You have office hours sessions with Laura. There are 2 of those. So the first one comes in week 1, and that is just a 60-minute check-in, an opportunity to sort of informally raise some of your doubts and concerns about the case, to introduce yourself and get to know Laura a little bit in an informal setting. The first workshop comes at the end of week 1, and these are really important sessions. They're 2 hours long. And the initial session covers an overview of the exam and what the marking process is, so that you're aware of what the examiner is really looking for. Into week 2, then, you have a look at the real life industry. You do your first mock exam. Very crucially, they come with model solutions. Each of these 5 mock exams comes with model solutions. And crucially, as I said, with marking and detailed feedback on your strengths, your weaknesses, etc. At the end of week 2, then, in the next workshop session with Laura, you cover mock 1. So she does a debrief of that first mock attempt. So very, very useful. Into week 3, you've got the first of 3 sessions on applied theory. So the first is E3 applied. You take the main, this is where Laura takes the main theories from E3 that we've identified as being particularly important for this case, and talks you through, first of all, a review of the theory and a likely exam scenario and how you might actually go about answering that particular scenario on the day of the exam. So you've got one of those for E3, you've got another for F3, you've got another for P3, that's in week 4. Back to week 3, you do your second mock exam, and again, you've got marking and feedback there. Into week 4, as I said before, you've got this P3 applied session. That's the third of these applied sessions, E3, F3, and P3 applied. You've got another informal call with Laura, office hours, that's 1 hour, where you can just raise doubts in an informal environment. You've got the next workshop, which covers mock 2. So it's a review of mock 2, a debrief of that with Laura. Then you've got your third mock attempt. You've got marking and feedback for that mock. Then you've got another workshop with Laura doing a debrief of the third mock. Into week 5, you've got a key issues series of recordings on the top 10 issues from the case, and the way that they can present themselves on exam day, and some of the considerations you would have about the theories to use in addressing those issues. You've got the fourth mock then in week 5. Again, that comes with marking, with feedback. You've got another debrief session with Laura, and into the final week, you've got your last mock attempt. And by this point, you should be really practiced and really quite clear on what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, etc. Again, that will come with marking, with feedback, and you'll have a final workshop then with Laura, giving final recommendations ahead of the exam. And there will be one more live webinar session, an end of course informal question and answer session with Laura. So it's very, very comprehensive. You know, there's a mix of theory, you've got real life industry analysis, you've got the pre-scene analysis, so very, very exam focused and practical. And you've obviously got those mock exams and debriefs and marking as well. So really, really useful to have that. So we've benchmarked this course very carefully against other providers. We know that the price point is high, but much lower than other providers for this kind of very involved course. So these courses typically cost in excess of £1,000, so maybe 900, 800, 1,000, 1,200 pounds. This is normally priced at £699. We're dropping the price to £599. So if you book your place in the next 48 hours, you lock in that lower price of £599. So as I said, very simple to join. You just hit one of these big join the Aug22 Elite buttons on this page, and I'll send you the link afterwards, and it leads you over into this, which is the deposit. Okay, so that's all you pay for now, £99. Then in a month, we start sending you on a monthly basis the next link to pay the next installment. So they would come in £100 installments over the course of the next 5 months. or 6 months if you've purchased before. But as I said, we're dropping the price to $599 for the next 48 hours. Okay, so there are some frequently asked questions for this particular course at the end of the page. Go through those. If you have any doubts though, please drop us an email at info@vivatuition.com and we'll get right back to you. Okay, so that's it. As I said, today's session is free. The remaining content that you see here is not free, but you can unlock all of that with the Strategic Case Study Elite course. Okay, I do highly recommend it. And I'm going to pass over to Laura now. So enjoy the session. Thank you for your patience. I'll send out the links in both the chat box and an email afterwards. Laura, enjoy. Best of luck.
Thank you. Are you all right, Thomas, like you have done in before, where some questions I see they're coming in now that I think are best placed for you, so not the technical questions. Are you all right to answer those?
I am. So I should mention that. So the temptation is probably to pester Laura with all of these administrative questions and questions on price and all of the rest of it. You can send those over to me in the chat box, or send an email to info@vivatuition.com. If you have questions about the price, when particular classes are taking place, anything like that, they're best sent to info@vivatuition.com. If it's more theory related, pre-scene related, etc., Laura is the right person there. Okay.
Okay, I shall just share my screen, and if you wouldn't mind telling me if I've done it correctly, then we will be good to go.
I see that. Yeah.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Okay. Thanks, Thomas.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so passing over to me. So definitely, I think Thomas has given us an overview of the course and the elite group as well. So I'm a massive fan of the Viva course. And another key thing, that if you're in the elite group, Viva operate a student community for the elite. And I think for the May 22 sitting, I found that really enjoyable. It was daily contact, usually with students. So if I see something interesting in the news, or if a student had a technical query or a thought that they wanted to share with the fellow elite group members, we use that community space. And it was really great. So it was students helping students, and then also input and comment for me. So I really felt that in the elite course, you know, we were able to stick to the program, but there is loads of opportunity to ask questions. And I think certainly for me, it made the course very engaging, and I think the students enjoyed it as well. So I'm going to take you through this slide pack now for mastering August 22 case study. So let's have a look at the agenda and what's coming up on this. So we'll start off by having a little look at the pre-scene information. So the pre-scene information has been around since the May exam. Some of you may have looked at this already. It may be new for some of you. So I'm going to walk you through that. Then we will have a look at some of the key theories that come up in strategic case studies, so you can start to think about those and how you're going to prepare yourself. Then, importantly, from my point of view, we'll look at an action plan and the advice that we would give you to prepare for strategic case study. For me, I think at this stage in your careers, you're all busy people with your work role, and we want you to be able to work in the most efficient and effective way possible to pass strategic case study. So again, in the elite groups, appreciating that not everyone's the same, but I like to give advice on the best way to study for you to plug your gap. So we look at your specific weaknesses, mock to mock, week to week, and then really help you have an action plan to close the gap and be as successful as possible, as efficiently as possible. And then at the end of the session, and we tend to do this in our webinars, so the midpoint check-in and the end of course check-in, it's very informal. You can ask me whatever you like. I'll read the chat box and the questions. And again, I find those sessions, at the end of those webinars and the check-ins, students learn from questions that other students raise, share ideas, and that side of things. So the Q&A sessions, I think, are really invaluable as well. So let's have a look at our pre-scene now. So the company that we are looking at for August 22 is Snakwheel. And Snakwheel is one of Wistaria's largest fast food delivery platforms. So when I saw that this was the company for the pre-scene, I was really enthused. I think it's a great industry to have a look at and learn from. And our real world companies, the examples that we're looking at here would be Uber Eats, Deliveroo, and Just Eat. And again, the case study is a real opportunity to dive into this industry, look at real life examples, and it really brings the material to life. And knowing those real life examples helps you tackle the questions much more easily. And again, industry knowledge is something we cover in the industry webinar and that we would talk about in every workshop as well. So Snakwheel is based in the fictitious country of Wistaria, and within Wistaria, we are using the $. When we look through the pre-scene and we look at Snakwheel's history, it was launched in 2007. So the founders saw an opportunity in the market, much like Will Shoe with Deliveroo, to deliver food to customers in a location of their choice. They were very successful and then floated on the Wistarian Stock Exchange in 2016. And in the pre-scene analysis, we talk about the implications of our company, Snakwheel, being listed and some of the opportunities and potential drawbacks or considerations that that would bring within our strategic case study answers. So Snakwheel operates exclusively in Wistaria, and this is mentioned a couple of times in the pre-scene. And again, we use this knowledge and we explore it in the applied series. So that's our E3, P3 and F3 webinars to look at what potential question scenarios we would have here. So one of those may be, for example, that Snakwheel looks to operate in different jurisdictions, clearly a big strategic choice. And we may get a case study question then looking at the analysis, the risks, the strategic implications, etc. around that. We're given quite a lot of information in terms of Snakwheel's operations within Wistaria. They are the largest in Wistaria. As we said, they serve 12,000 fast food outlets. They divide up their area into 190 separate catchment areas. And we're told that they have 23 dark kitchens. Now, those of you who have looked at the pre-scene analysis will know that a dark kitchen is essentially a facility that is used by multiple restaurants to prepare food for delivery, but not serve customers there themselves. And again, when you get into the industry analysis, you will see that Uber Eats, Deliveroo, etc. operate dark kitchens as well. And again, it gives us another potential basis for a strategic case study exam day scenario that we look at. Now, the information here, for example, that last point, we need to have you at the stage where you will have that information at the tip of your tongue so that you can apply it in an exam day scenario, because as a senior manager in finance within Snakwheel, this is the information that you would be expected to know and apply. And very much the course is about getting you ready to apply that pre-scene knowledge in the most appropriate way. So let's have a look at Snakwheel's operations now. So they have a menu of a range of restaurants accessible to the end consumers via a Snakwheel app. And we'll have a look at the app and their website and data center shortly. So it's very heavily IT reliant. The pre-scene also goes on to discuss the 5 or 6 key restaurant partners that they have. And again, we cover that and the implications of some of those relationships within the pre-scene analysis. But they do have some of the #1 restaurants in the various different groups of restaurants. So they are, as I said, the #1, some key relationships there, and link up to consumers through the app. So the customers of Wistaria, so very much like individuals, you and I, we would place our orders through the platform, and then those orders are transmitted to the restaurants via the Snakwheel data center. Restaurants then prepare and pack the food to be collected. And then the other side is that couriers nearby are notified to come and collect the food from the restaurant and then deliver that to the consumers. So we have the customer, we have the restaurants, and we have the couriers. And as you progress through the course or have a read of the industry, if you look at, for example, the Deliveroo annual report and accounts, they refer to a three-sided marketplace. And the three-sided marketplace is the customer, the restaurant, and the courier. And essentially Deliveroo is there to bring those all together to match that supply and demand. And we're seeing that very much within the Snakwheel precinct. So in terms of the cash flows, the consumer, the customer, pays Snakwheel. Snakwheel then retains a commission, and we look in the industry analysis at the typical levels of commission and some controversy around commissions. So they retain their commission, and then they remit the net amount to the restaurants. Now that's an important fact to remember when we come to have a look at our financial analysis, because the working capital cycle is not what we're really used to seeing in a lot of companies. So that sort of cash flow is important to remember. Now, I did say before that the IT system is extremely important within this scenario, and it fits with CIMA's 2019 syllabus change. So a lot more focus on digital strategies, digital technology, disruptions, and we've been seeing that lately through the more recent strategic case study pre-scenes and exams. So it's very, very important to Snakwheel in terms of their operations and also in terms of their principal risks. So they are highly integrated with IT, and it connects to Snakwheel's own data center, connecting those three sides of the three-sided marketplace, the customer, the restaurants, and the couriers, using that operational flow that we've shown in the previous slide. So the data center in the pre-scene, it very clearly sets this out, serves two functions. The first one is managing capacity. So notifying customers of delays and managing courier availability. So that's absolutely key. One of the things that we looked at in the May study and looking at real life examples of this is customers really increasing lack of patience. So we want accurate information on when our food's coming to us, and there can be a lot of dissatisfaction and then reputational risk if it is late. And the IT system within Snakwheel is absolutely key to managing that. So that is a significant part. And clearly that's going to be run on algorithms. Those algorithms are going to be based on historic data, which Snakwheel collects and studies in order to provide our customers with accurate delivery times and help restaurants manage capacity and match up with couriers. So a very, very delicate balance, but then again, that makes for a great question at strategic case study. The other function of the data center is to manage operations. So managing the process of the food ordering and the delivery, so to make that as smooth as possible. So they're the two main functions of the data center. As I've mentioned, it will record a significant amount of data in doing that. And then with that data, it is analyzed extensively. Now that might be from a marketing purpose in order to determine, what are our most popular times of the day, what are the most popular restaurant meals, etc., but also in terms of that managing capacity so that they will be better at predicting demand and managing courier availability and managing restaurant capacity to satisfy the customer within the time frames that they have given. So that's an overview of the IT system. I think it's one of the most important areas that you need to look at, obviously with the associated P3 content of cybersecurity as well. Yeah, so very important strategically within our E pillar, and very important in terms of cyber risk and the controls and mitigations that would go with that. So another key issue is couriers, and this is a really, really hot topic in the industry. So our couriers are a key stakeholder. So they are the individuals that are going to take the restaurant food and deliver it to the end consumer. So to an extent, they are the face-to-face relationship that Snakwheel has with its customers as well. So a very, very key stakeholder. So we learned from the pre-scene that Snakwheel have 3,000 full-time couriers. And in our pre-scene analysis, we'll go into more detail about the types of orders and the locations of orders that they tend to use their full-time employed couriers for. The majority of the couriers, however, are on an independent basis. So the so-called gig economy freelancers, and there are 23,000 couriers who are working with Snakwheel. Okay, and I think that is probably the area that is of most interest, definitely the area that is covered the most when you read the press in this area. So independent contractors are not employees, and we need to understand the consequences of this. Therefore, they are paid a fixed fee per delivery. This is quite controversial. It's something that I would encourage you to read about, because the individual themselves, the courier, is bearing the risk if they are not given sufficient deliveries when they are working. Again, they're not going to earn a lot. If the delivery time takes them longer than expected, they're not compensated for that time. So they're paid a fixed fee per delivery, and they bear the risk of that. Now, I've said it's controversial, and no doubt you'll read the press on that, have a look at why, but it is the industry norm. So it's not as if Snakwheel is doing something unusual here. And again, this is information that you will be expected to know. You are a senior manager working within Snakwheel. You've got to know what the industry norms are. You've got to know some of the risks in our macro environment around that. And you've got to know exactly what your organization, Snakwheel, does as well. So paid a fixed fee. They have very flexible working arrangements. This is one of the most attractive things for couriers. And again, in our industry analysis, we have a look at some comment from couriers on this. Again, you can do a lot of wider reading on it, but those flexible work arrangements are absolutely key to the operational model for Snakwheel and our real world equivalents such as Deliveroo, Just Eat, etc. And working through the course, you will see some of the threats where this flexibility is reduced, maybe from legislative changes. We'll have a look at some examples of that, or a threat from a wider ESG, environmental, social and governance, or corporate social responsibility point of view. So the flexible working arrangements can be a massive upside for Snakwheel and couriers, but also we've got to understand the implications of the risks that come with that and any potential change that might come to those flexible working arrangements. Another thing that we learn is that our independent couriers do not have any reimbursement from those expenses. So it goes along with the same things I was saying about that fixed fee for delivery. The individual courier is bearing a lot of that risk, i.e. Snakwheel is not bearing that risk. But we need to put ourselves in the shoes of those couriers, understand the point of view or implications for that key stakeholder, because that will help us plan and deal with any issues that might come along for Snakwheel. So again, the same things that I would say about it, it is potentially controversial, but the industry norm. All couriers are evaluated based on factors such as feedback from customers and the numbers of deliveries made. And again, think about back to the IT system, back to the data center managing capacity. If you have a courier that gets good feedback and is able to make a lot of deliveries on time, then more orders may be given to that courier. But where does that leave other couriers that maybe are prevented from delivering things through circumstances beyond their own control. Again, a real combination of strategic issues, corporate social responsibility, and as we'll see, comment from investors on this area. So I would encourage you to have a look at the Deliveroo IPO and some of the comments that key institutional investors made with regard to the gig economy and couriers at that time. Now, the core values is one of the areas of the pre-scene that I find that I would quote the most in any case study written answer. So it's one of the pages, that along with the principal risks, that I tend to look at the most. So it's really, really important that you have a good knowledge of those core values. You'll be quoting and applying those within your exam. And let's take you through these. So we have 6 core values. The first one is customers come first. So we've already seen a number of key stakeholders here: customers, restaurants, couriers, and customers come first. So there's a very, very clear statement. And that is something that if you're looking at any strategic evaluation or strategic implications or risks, that you need to think about the customer perspective and what we're saying from our values there. The next one is we make life simple. So again, think about if we order food through an app, it is delivered to our door. Technology is vital in order to deliver that. So any question or any case study scenario that's looking at, maybe a threat to the IT system or enhancing the IT system, we can bring in this core value of making life simple. So that's very important as well. The next one is we are team players. And again, there are a lot of very important stakeholders within Snakwheel. So being a team player is one, again, that you can quote a lot in terms of the relationships with restaurants, the relationships with customers, employees, or self-employed couriers, and that teaming aspect we do draw on a lot. Making things happen. This is about innovation and driving things forward. So it is a very competitive industry, very, very competitive. And therefore that pushes the players to be more innovative. And it ties in with, for example, making life simple. That is the thing that I think, I know I, as a customer, very lazy, want the most. So we are looking for the players in the market to make things happen, make life more simple for us. And our investors clearly are looking for those innovative ideas to win the all-important market share. This next one, we take care of our employees. Very, very clear. It's about employees. Remember, in an earlier slide, we have 3,000 full-time couriers. So we take care of them, we look after them, but it does raise a question about the difference in treatment between our employees and our independent contractors. So again, that's one of the themes that we explore drawing on this core value. And the last core value does relate to the independent contractors. It says we create opportunity for people. And when I've been reading around sort of first person perspectives on gig workers, so the freelance couriers in this industry, a lot of them do say it's fantastic. They can choose their own working hours. On really busy days, they earn reasonable rates of pay. And again, Snakwheel, very much like the Deliveroo model, sees it as matching that customer demand with the need for couriers to work and restaurants to sell food and create opportunity for all. So really important to be aware of those core values. And then the mission statement, again, is something that we would draw on a lot, especially for any strategic implications or strategic evaluation. And again, here you see the prioritization of the customer. So to enable consumers to buy Westaria's best fast food without leaving their homes or workplaces. So the consumers we've already talked about, links in with that core value, but focus on as well, it refers to Westaria. So we know they operate in Westaria exclusively. So the mission is probably something you want to draw on if we're looking at international expansion at all. And again, have a look at the best fast food. For me, I would be looking at, that means what restaurant partners do we choose and how, if at all, do we manage the quality of that food, and what we offer. So even in a mission statement, there's a lot that we can pull apart so that you're able to apply that in the appropriate places in your exam. So let's have a look at our board. So the precinct sets out details of the various different board members, a little bit of a bio or background on them, and the board role and structure. This again is something that I would draw on quite a lot. We get a lot of questions in strategic case study on corporate governance. So this is a key area to draw on there. So our board consists of 5 executive directors and 4 non-executive directors. And the 4 non-executive directors here includes the chairperson, who is Esma from memory. So we have 5 executive directors, 3 non-executive directors and a chair. And in the pre-scene analysis, we will pull that apart and look at the implications of that from corporate governance best practice. So the executive board, we have our CEO, that's Ahmed from memory, our chief operating officer, Eleni. We have our CFO, Peter. Now, Peter as CFO is the person that we would probably be working with the most as a senior finance manager. And a lot of the mock questions and the questions that we give to you in the applied series, they come from Peter. So Peter's key for us. The marketing director is Rashida, and for the first time that I've seen in strategic case study, we have a chief information officer, and that is Joel. So again, that's a hint to me that the IT systems, the data center, and the importance of technology is a really, really important area to prepare for success in the exam. So we have our chief information officer there, Joel. We have the usual board committees that we would be expecting to see for a quoted company, and to be honest, expecting to see within the pre-scene. So nothing unusual here. We have our audit committee, our risk committee, remuneration committee, and nomination committee. And they are represented by the 3 non-executive directors. It's absolutely vital that you are clear on the roles and responsibilities of those different committees so that you're able to critique that as necessary when or if it would come up in your case study exam. One of the real strengths, I would say, of the board for this pre-scene is when you read their biographies and their background, they really do have a diverse range of fields, all with pretty relevant experience for Snakwheel. So that's a big strength. And how would you apply that in your case study exam? You'll find you'll often get questions where maybe something's happened and maybe an investor or maybe in the press have criticized Snakwheel and its actions. And then you may be asked if it is due to poor corporate governance. And one of the things of corporate governance, as we know, is to have a board with diverse and appropriate experience. So that would be a fact then that you could draw upon and apply in your answer. So a massive strength of the board is that relevant experience. Now, the next slide, I would say, if I had to say which single area, I think it's 2 pages of the pre-scene that I use the most, it would be this one, the principal risks and response. It is one of the things that I think about if I am looking at strategic implications. So strategic means obviously that higher level, long term, of importance to the board. And the fact that these are the principal risks shows that these are some of the priorities of the board and the company. So if you're asked for any strategic evaluation or strategic risks, using the principal risks, they are the things that the board are going to be interested in, okay? It also comes up a lot if, again, you're looking at corporate governance criticism. So risk management is a key part of corporate governance. And in the pre-scene analysis, we go through each of the principal risks and we would criticize that from, is it appropriate risk identification? Is it appropriate risk assessment? Are they mitigating those risks appropriately? And all of that debate and practice will give you the skills that you will need to apply the principal risks within your exam. So there's 6 of these, and let's have a look at these. The first one is the risk that consumer demand for fast food delivery may decline. Okay, so currently I think in a lot of jurisdictions, certainly within the UK, we're talking about a cost of living crisis, for example. And that means that there might be less discretionary spend. And I would assume that food delivery to your home is a discretionary spend. So is there a risk that that could decline? And Snakwheel's current response or mitigation to that is to advertise heavily, monitoring customer feedback continuously. So the question I would put to you in order to get yourself ready for case study is, do you think that they have fully identified everything around that risk? And do you think that mitigation is adequate, or what else would you do? Okay, and asking yourself that for each of the risks is great preparation and building up those skills that we need. So the next one, a risk that restaurants may terminate their arrangements or their relationship with Snakwheel. Obviously, if we lose a key restaurant, we might lose key consumers with that. And currently the mitigation is to constantly look at adding value to the service provided. So what do you think? Do you think that's an adequate mitigation? Is it too passive? One thing I would say here, the relationship between Snakwheel and the restaurants is very, very complex. I'll reference ecosystems within the E pillar later on. And the restaurants, what I want you to think about is they are, to an extent, our partner. We can't serve the consumer without them. They are, to an extent, our customer because they pay us the commission in order to advertise the services on our app. So they are our partner, they are our customer, but they are also, to an extent, our competitor as well. So I'm sure a lot of you can think of restaurants that sell through Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber Eats, but also sell through their own applications and apps, or have the potential to do so. And so when we're looking at any sort of strategic evaluation or strategic implications that involves our restaurant relationships, you've got to be really, really aware of that complex relationship. And that's something that we would pick up, or you will see if you pick up on the course in the applied webinar for E3. So it's something I think is very, very interesting. The next one is, because we're essentially serving the end consumer together, the reputation of Snakwheel to a large degree relies on the reputation of restaurant partners as well. So poor quality food, who does that reflect poorly on? Is it the restaurant? Is it Snakwheel? Is it both? And I think that's very fair principal risk. And let's have a look at the mitigations. So we provide feedback to restaurants on issues that affect customer feedback. Do you think that is robust enough? Another area that's interesting that we would explore is a lot of the delivery apps also impose a financial penalty on some of their restaurant partners where feedback is poor or food quality is not good. Think back to what I've just said about that complex relationship with restaurants. So what do you think about that? You can see why the penalty would potentially help protect the reputation, but does it damage the other side? And what I will be encouraging you to do throughout the course is let's think about all of these areas and chat about them. So we've done as much thinking as possible. And therefore, when you're in the exam, you can hit the ground running, and you have a good understanding of these issues and what you might say. So very, very complex there. Now, I did say that IT was referenced within the principal risk. So the next two principal risks cover IT. So the risk is our IT systems are highly integrated and complex. And I think without a shadow of a doubt, we would agree that that should be a principal risk. The mitigation in this case is to have a hot backup site and staff the data center with highly qualified experts. So they're obviously investing a lot of cash in this. You'll know from P3 the hot backup site is one of the most expensive sort of business continuity plans, but it's understandable because they couldn't operate if the system was down. And again, using those highly qualified experts. The next risk is again linked to IT and cybersecurity. Snakwheel will hold an awful lot of customer data. And when you go through the pre-scene analysis, you'll see what information they do hold on customers. We know from GDPR, data privacy legislation, that it has a huge potential negative impact for reputation, but also for fines and legal costs, etc. So the mitigation that Snakwheel has is they invest heavily into IT security. And I would encourage you all to have a look at real world examples around cybersecurity, because I find that they help me come up with better ideas and responses when it comes to case study answers. So two very, very important principal risks there. And the last principal risk is, as I said, an industry hot topic overall here. They're very dependent on their couriers. And in particular, I would say those independent freelance couriers, because the operating model relies on that flexibility and having that flexible courier cost as well. So the response to this is to offer comparable levels of remuneration. So again, ask yourself, do you think that is an adequate mitigation? What do other competitors do? What are the other risks potentially with being dependent on couriers? Should they have other plans? And these, as I said before, are things that we would explore during the course, because I think it's one of the hot topics that could come up. So looking at the finances within the, I think it's the second pre-CIMA webinar, we will, or I will rather, run you through the finances in detail. Quite a lot of the time, I need you to have certain key ratios, key facts at your fingertips, so that you can apply those. So let's have a look. We're given the financial information between 2020 and 2021, so we can see how the company is doing relative to the prior year. So total revenue has increased, which is good news, by 19%. Operating profits have also increased by 30%. At the net profit level, again, we have an increase of almost 34%. Non-current asset base, that's gone on up by 4.5%. Borrowings, though, have also increased by 11%. We'll look in a moment at the impact on gearing, and cash has increased by 3.9%. So for all those figures, it shows a fairly healthy financial position. And how I would want you to apply those within case study is be ready to think about the impact on some of those key ratios if you decide to take another strategic option. Again, the finances, you can look at those if you're looking at the feasibility in terms of strategic application. And remember, another key stakeholder is investors, or investors rather. So they will be looking at these key financials, and you need to have an understanding of what those are to understand the impact or the movement in the financials of any strategy proposed by the board. Now, the key ratios, I think these are very important. So I'm going to run through them and then set a little bit of context for you as well. So our operating profit margin has increased from 32% to 35%. So an improving position, which is good news. And it's the same story for our net profit margin. It's gone from just over 22% to 25%. So again, an improving position. From our investors' point of view, having a look at return on capital employed, again, an improving position, moving from just under 5% to 6% in 2021. Cash conversion cycle now, again, you need to have a little look at this in more detail because it's a little bit more unusual from some of the organizations and industries we've looked at in the past. Remember, consumers will pay Snakwheel upfront. And so it's not waiting, there's no credit period after you've ordered your delivery food at home. You pay on the spot. Snakwheel gets that and then remits after commission the rest to the restaurants, and clearly it will pay the couriers as well. So our cash conversion cycle is actually negative. In 2020, it was 11 days and it moved to 14 days, negative 14 days in 2021. So an improving position on cash flow as well. And then the last key margin is gearing. Now, I know there's many ways to calculate gearing. Here we've used it as long-term debt over long-term debt plus equity. In 2020, 12.6, moving to 13.4 in 2021. So although it has declined, and that is fair to say, I think it is still relatively low. So that would indicate that we have capacity to raise debt. And I would encourage you to set that gearing in context of have a look at interest cover, have a look at the cash position, have a look at the asset base in terms of securitization as well. And again, we will cover all of that within the pre-scene, and it will be applied throughout the course as well. Oh yes, just before I go on, one thing I said I would do for those key ratios is set it in industry context. One of the things that students observe the most is that the financial position of Snakwheel and the financial direction that Snakwheel is doing in terms of growth is highly unusual compared to the industry. So when you do look at the analogous industry real world examples, you will see that very few of those are profitable at the moment. So an interesting comparison to think about why Snakwheel may be so profitable compared to some of the other industry players as well. Now, it is a very, very competitive industry. One of the key things that we need in this industry is a critical mass of consumers signed up to our app, because the whole operational model, again, relies on a critical mass of users. So the competitors in the real world are always vying for competition. Tie that back to the importance of the customer that we looked at in the core values and the mission. So let's have a look at competition within Westaria. So we're told there are two main competitors, Munchbike and Truckbites, and we're provided with comparative financial information for Munchbike. So Snakwheel, by revenue and profits, is the larger company than Munchbike, and we're also told, remember, it's Westaria's #1. Munchbike itself had a drop in operating profits between 2020 and 2021, and also they saw a decrease in cash. So their current ratio, although still relatively healthy, has gone from 3.2 to 1.9. Similarly, Munchbike's gearing ratio is slightly higher than Snakwheel's, but again, it's quite small, and overall, I would say that it's still, relatively low. So again, think about why we have competition, potential scenarios on an acquisition, potential scenarios on a takeover, maybe Munchbike and Truckbites could merge and provide more competition. And again, the course will prepare you for those scenarios. The real life industry is very, very acquisitive as well. So little bits of supplementary information. A lot of this comes from the news stories that we see at the end of the pre-scene. Again, we'll walk you through those in detail, but pulled out a couple of points here. I like the news stories at the end, and I like to imagine that I am a senior manager in Westaria. That is the news that I will have read. It's the news my investors will have read, that the board will have read, and you can bring in and use that information quite a lot. It often, I find, supplements some of the unseen information that you'll see on exam day. So restaurant chains pay a fee to appear on the top of any food delivery app. So even within our restaurant partners, we will prioritize when a customer searches for what food is available at what time, depending maybe on the fees that they pay. And again, for me, I think, well, what if we had two restaurant chains on our app that were competing? How do we maintain those relationships as well as maximize our revenue in terms of that? And, so which ones do we favor on the app? Food delivery apps can also track your location, and that means that they will only show you choices from restaurants that are close enough and also open at those hours. So there's a news article at the end of the pre-scene that covers that, gives a little bit more information on how that works. The next one I think is really one of the key pieces of information. We're told that in Westaria, the food delivery platforms have reached about 55% penetration rate, and we are currently in a mature market as a result of that. The article goes on to say that penetration is unlikely to exceed 65%. So this is a fact that's facing the board within Wistaria. And remember, we are Wistaria only operations. So what is the board going to do as it moves into this mature market? So you might want to think about some of your Ansoff theories coming in there in terms of what you're going to do in a mature market, and if you want to continue your growth. So customers' mood will impact on how generous they are with tips to couriers. And I think that's important because for those freelance couriers, they may be relying quite heavily on tips to make it financially viable for them. But, you know, depending on a customer's view of the service, might impact their tip. And again, another thing that we had a look at in the elite group, it came up last time, was looking at different cultures. Now, I know we only operate in Wistaria, but if we were to move to other jurisdictions, some other jurisdictions are typically more generous with tips. It is more customary than other jurisdictions. And it was quite interesting to compare and contrast different jurisdictions, what the consumer market's like, and how the cultural impact, both of different foods and also things like tipping, can impact the success or failure of our food delivery apps as they move into different jurisdictions. And then the last one is couriers' earnings depend on how many deliveries they make. And this is covered, I think it's in the last article within the pre-scene. And I like that one because it puts us in the shoes of the courier. And as I said, yes, we are there primarily to serve Snakwheel, but we can only do so if we can put ourselves in the shoes of the key stakeholders, and the couriers are one of those. So that last article is quite interesting at the end of the pre-scene. Now, there are many, many different potential scenarios, and you know, we'll talk about those through the course. So just a little taster of 4 of the scenarios that we think could come up now. Acquisitions, I think, is a key one. So we know it is an acquisitive industry. We know that Snakwheel operate only in Wistaria, and we know of 2 key competitors in Wistaria. So Snakwheel may look to acquire another business or a related business within Wistaria or overseas potentially. So you've got to be ready for acquisitions, both in terms of your technical knowledge, your pre-scene knowledge, and your real world and industry knowledge for that. Another key area that we think might come up is expansion. So I've already said that we're looking at a mature market within Wistaria. So what does that mean for Snakwheel? They could look to potentially expand in new regions outside of Wistaria. You need to be on top of some of the advantages and disadvantages of that. And in coming up with those advantages and disadvantages, you've got to use the unseen information, but prepare yourself to draw down on your industry knowledge and your pre-scene information to do that. Let's have a look at some improvements that Snakwheel could decide to make. I think the most obvious one is in technology. So it's an innovative, it's a disruptive industry. So what about investment in technology? Could that help the efficiency of operations? The key thing I would be preparing for there is having a look at the long-term and the short-term implications of that. Okay. And then legal issues. So I've said before, this is a hot topic for sure. What about legislative risks? The most obvious one, but not the only one, would relate to the classification of our gig workers. What would happen if new legislation came in to give our gig workers more rights? What would happen to our operational model? What would happen to our cost base? What would happen to that all-important flexibility? How would our IT system change? But there are other areas that I think that this industry and Snakwheel is at risk at from a legislative point of view as well. And again, we touch on those in the pre-scene analysis, and we pull them up throughout the webinars and throughout the workshops as well. So a little bit of information there to whet your appetite and some advice in terms of how to prepare your Excel. So key theories, a word of caution here. So this part of the webinar, we're going to discuss key areas of the strategic syllabus that could be tested, but it is definitely not exhaustive. I always say to the students, you've got to be ready for anything. So have a look at E3, P3 and F3 in detail. It really would be a high risk strategy to exclude topics that you think may be difficult to test in this scenario. And also I know with students, they do like to leave out topics that they have found that they've struggled with in the past. For me, they would be the ones that I would start with. You want to go in and be confident on exam day, and therefore don't exclude anything. Be prepared for everything. I'm very, very risk averse. If you work with me, you'll find that out. So play it safe and cover all of your areas. So the key theories for P3. P3 is really, really important for strategic case study, and you have to make sure that you understand each of these areas. The ones that we would recommend initially having a look at are risk identification, management of those risks, corporate governance, as I've said, as I've gone through this, I've referenced corporate governance a couple of times. Reputational risk is a huge area for strategic case study questions. Risk registers, and we've had a look at the principal risks. Internal controls. This is an area I find students struggle with. My best advice that I can give you for internal controls is practice, practice, and be very practical in your recommendations. Internal audit and cybersecurity. With that heavy reliance on IT, cyber risk is very important. Moving on to F3, again, sometimes I find students are pleasantly surprised when it comes to the F3 syllabus. They feel a bit daunted by it, but when we look at it in detail and with application, you know, it's not so bad. But also, word of warning here, I find with the F3 syllabus, a lot of students will do what I call a theory dump. So they will put, let's say, for example, with valuations, you know, very correct and detailed technical information, but it's not applied. It's not applied to Snakwheel, it's not applied to the unseen, and it's not applied to the industry. So really, really, the application is key. Some of the theories we think that you need to be ready for are different sources of finance, different capital structures, dividend policy is very popular, comes up a lot. Management of currency risk. Now again, Westaria only, but that doesn't mean that currency risk won't be tested. For example, we might decide to move into a new jurisdiction. Business valuations are always very popular. And as I've said, I want to see, well, strategic level application, it's got to be applied there. Integrated reporting, and again, environmentally minded reporting, very, very hot topic in the news at the moment. Managing interest risk and explaining share price movements as well. So F3, very important, very, very much about application. And then the E pillar, we need to have a good understanding here. Questions from this area, again, are about application to the unseen information. Very, very important to look at that unseen and draw in unseen information into your answer. So we will look at evaluating different strategies. We will look at stakeholders, ecosystems. I've mentioned before, the ecosystem can be quite complicated and complex, but that provides an opportunity of you. It certainly will give you more to say in your answers and provide a depth to your answers. Digital transformation, very important. Ethics normally comes up in every sitting and every variant. And digital strategies. Strategic performance management, so that ties in sometimes a lot with internal control, so how we set goals, etc., and change management as well. I find students forget about their change management theories, but it's definitely worth having a look at those because you can get asked for some specific recommendations that you would have. So what action plan would we have for you to pass? We think that passing a strategic case study requires the following. So you've got to know what the exam looks like, what it's made up of, what is it expected of you. So I would take you through that in the first workshop, the mechanics of the strategic case study exam. As I've just set out, you've got to have an excellent knowledge of all of your E, F, and P pillars at strategic level. Exam technique is vital. It's a really time pressured exam, and therefore having good exam technique means that you will always be scoring marks with everything that you write down. That's something that we do in every single workshop. Knowledge of the pre-scene, again, you'll gain that from the first couple of webinars, but we revisit that constantly. Time management, for me, that ties in with exam technique. Now, every student is different, but I like to coach the students in time management and find something that works for them. And you have to be committed to your studies. It is not easy. It's not an easy exam. And I don't think it's something that you can cram for. So I would say dedicate some time on a regular basis to that. But remember, as I said, we like, or I like rather, your study to be as efficient as possible. So yes, I want commitment, but I would rather that you were working in the right way and therefore maximizing every 15, 20 minutes that you are studying for strategic case studies. That's something I like to talk about quite a lot. So an action plan for you. Now, clearly everyone's circumstances are different. So this is some general guidance that you might want to think about. Book your exam now. I find that that focuses the mind. So definitely book your exam so that you know that you're committed to the exam. Then the next stage is become really familiar with the pre-scene document. Then try to revise something every week. Look at those key theories. We've given you some ideas here, and remember the tip to not ignore the ones that you don't like. I would say start with those first, tackle those. You've got to be confident going into the exam. One of the key things for me, and I say this to all students, is to do the mock exams and get feedback on those is essential. I would rather a student did a mock exam and got 0, but learned from it because they've done it in exam conditions and they've really given it a go, then maybe had a look at maybe some of the answers up front. You need to practice that thinking. You need to put yourself under a little bit of stress to practice what you would do in an exam scenario. Normally, I say, you know, the first 2 mocks, maybe not do them fully to exam time, have your books around you if that makes you feel more comfortable, use them as, you know, learning exercises. But for mocks 3, 4, and 5, I want them done in exam conditions. And in class, I talk about, not by name, but a lot of previous students and what they have said about the course afterwards. And their top tip is always do those in exam conditions and practice what you would do in the exam. I'm obsessed with a gap analysis. Identify your weakness after every mock. Come up with a plan about how you're going to address that weakness and then apply that in your next mock and move yourself forward. So that's part of that efficient method of studying. And you constantly have to be going over your key theory, your pre-scene, and your industry knowledge. But if you're interested in the industry, it's so much easier. And I think this is a great industry to work with. So practice does make perfect. And I would say it is a skills-based exam. So practicing always builds those skills. And tying in with that, as we say on the point here, it's fine to make mistakes. The mocks are there to highlight weaknesses and learn from those mistakes. And that's great in the elite group because we all learn from each other as well. So as I said, I'd be much more comfortable with a student who dives in and has a go with a mock. Doesn't matter if they don't pass it, as long as they learn from it. They're definitely part of the learning. So let's have a look at what we think of the learning cycle. So understand the theory and the pre-scene. Yes, you need to have a good grounding, but don't let that stop you starting with the mocks. So have an understanding of the theory and then apply it. So look at mock papers, look at past exam questions, and there's various other tips and ways of doing that we cover in the elite group as well. One thing that I think the stronger students do is they really, really look at the feedback that they get on their mocks. So they read through the markers' information in detail. They then make an action plan of what they want to improve on, do that, and then sit the next mock. So having a look at that feedback in detail, going through Viva's suggested answer as well is really, really important. I like to say to students, what does your thought process need to be for you to come up with an answer like that. So we practice thought processes and approaches, and that makes us really, really flexible on exam day. So as I said, the last stage is then implement that feedback and then start all over again. No one ever feels 100% confident for strategic case study, but one thing that I noticed, especially for the May sitting, I think it was one of the latter mocks, students would say to me, oh, I did the mock in exam conditions, Laura, it was a nightmare, I haven't passed, but I just kept going. And then when the feedback came, they had passed, they'd done really well. And I think that was an essential part of their learning for the real exam day, because they learned, don't give up. There might be an area of the task that's tricky or, you know, you're not sure of, but if you give up, you'll definitely not pass. And it's only through doing mocks in exam conditions that you learn that resilience and you learn to keep going, and then pleasantly surprised as well. So it is hard work and it is commitment, but it's one of the best courses to teach, and hopefully, and this is what students say, one of their, you know, their best learning experiences. It is really, really enjoyable. So it is passable. I say that to everyone. I've had students come to me before that have never passed a case study first time, but they've enjoyed strategic case study and they have passed first time, which is great. And I would say to you now, have a think about what we've covered here and book your exam and draft yourself up a study plan, and a realistic study plan. Starting to work now means that you will be prepared for any bumps that come along in terms of your work life or personal life, and it'll still put you in a position to pass strategic case study in August. So have a look at that syllabus, have a look at the pre-scene information, get practicing on questions, do the mocks. The mocks is, I would say, the most important part of the course. And then that all important gap analysis. So at each stage, see how you're doing, see where your weaknesses are, and then make a plan to improve upon those. Okay. And very best of luck. I mean, this is the last exam for all of you. It's going to lead to a fantastic qualification and hopefully a fantastic career for you all. And definitely myself and the Viva team wish you every luck in your studies. So that is the end of the webinar for us today. I am around for some questions now. The address that Thomas mentioned, info@vivatuition.com, is there. I have seen here that a lot of questions have come up. I'm going to have a little look at those now. I will answer as many as I can. Some I may have to refer you on to Thomas. So I'm now going to have a little look at these questions. So bear with me while I bring the chat box up and I can have a little look and see what Thomas has answered. So you've, I think, I'm just seeing if Thomas has answered. So yes, everything is recorded, even if you're in the elite group. Sometimes students, you know, don't get to attend, as Thomas said. Everything's recorded. You get the link to that. And as I said, we have that community space that is for the elite group as well. So oftentimes students will direct message me through that, or you know, ask me any questions that maybe they've watched the recording, but they had a specific question that that didn't come up, and I can work with them and answer that for them. So it is, as Thomas says, really, really flexible course there. So I can see Thomas answering these. Okay, so in terms of those financial ones, I can see Thomas is answering. Bear with me while I quickly squeeze through to see if there is anything unanswered from my point of view. Is there a need to learn or memorize headings for technical theory, or is the concept sufficient? That's a really, really good question. I would say what we don't want to do is have a regurgitation of theory within your strategic case study answer. But if you have those models and theories learned, I find they help you produce a much better structured answer, and also bring in some of the technical language that your marker will be expecting to see. So yes, I would say we want to memorize those. I would say, though, don't study the technical material in isolation. Try to do it whilst looking at the precinct, try to do it whilst looking at industry information. It makes it so much more engaging from your point of view. And also that blending of pre-scene information, industry information, and technical information is exactly the way that you want to produce the information in the case study. So if you learn it that way, I think that's better. So to give you an example, if you were looking at, for example, Porter's 5 forces, I would encourage you to draw it out. That's your technical revision, and then map on any pre-scene information that's relevant. And then as you explore and read about the industry, make a couple of notes on that as well. And in that way, you are learning through your study to apply the theory. So that's what I would do. Now, in terms of headings, sometimes I do use technical headings within my case study answer. So one of the most common examples is if we were asked for strategic evaluation of a strategy, I would definitely be using suitability, acceptability, and feasibility, for example. But it always has to be in an applied way. So hopefully that answers your question there. So I see a question coming in here about a subscription to the elite group in April, but unable to top up access. What I would do there, again, that's more of a question for Thomas. If you send an email to info@vivatuition.com, they should be able to answer that for you. Any idea about answer format? I have loads of ideas about answer format, and that is something that we would look at in detail. I do it in the webinars, but we do it in a lot more detail in the elite groups. One thing that I would say as sort of a rough guide is when you get familiar with the exam structure, each task is broken down into the percentage of the marks that are available to each subtask within that. So you might get, say, 2 subtasks, A and B, each worth 50% each. And what I strongly encourage students to do is for each 10%, think about one heading, one idea. And essentially we're looking at writing a short paragraph. But I chat students through expected word count, roughly, how to lay it out. I love answer format with headings and subheadings. I think it looks professional. I think it helps you plan your time between, have you got a nice even spread between your ideas? Each idea, I tend to give a subheading and then balance my points throughout. So I find that format of headings and subheadings helps me manage my time, helps me make sure that I have a nice wide spread of points, an equal balance of points. You know, there's nothing that's ever, you know, obviously black or white at strategic level. So we've got to look at evaluating different points of view. And I tend to work on the basis of one idea per 10%, for example, and do it on that. But that's something that we would look at a lot within the elite course. So are the foundation materials available on the website adequate for revising strategic syllabus? I think that they are. So when you sign up for Elite, I believe that you have the all access. And again, in the Elite group, or if you sign up with looking at the webinars, we cover at a high level the theory that you need as well. So again, in that sort of community space, oftentimes students will say to me, what do you think I need to know about this? And if there aren't sufficient materials that they like, then I'll normally post an update or something like that. And again, those informal office hours is another opportunity for us to recap on certain theories, or those drop-in sessions as well. But the foundation materials are very, very comprehensive. And again, I would circle back to encouraging you to revising your theory in a very applied way. So as you're looking at it, apply it to the pre-scene, apply it to the industry, because it's much more effective. You're faster and more efficient in that way. And that's exactly what they want you to do in the exam. So what is the difference between strategic case study and management case study? Some key points to keep in mind. I think there's a much higher expectation of you at strategic case study. You are stepping up to that strategic level role. And for me, that is about not just making valid points, but prioritizing the points for a strategic level. If you can imagine, you're reporting to the board don't have a lot of time, and they're going to want you to prioritize the issues. So that's one of the things that I say. Lots of students, if we're looking at an answer, might have lots of valid points, and you definitely want to have that ability to think of lots of points and implications for an answer. But the strongest answers, and what the strategic level bit is about, being able to prioritize those and put the best points, the most significant points first. So that's one thing that I think is difference between strategic and management case. And I would say the other area will be that the pillars E, F, and P, yes, sometimes they're tested separately, but your answers have to include all of them almost at once, and again be able to evaluate and prioritize some of the implications and theories a lot more. So it's a lot more holistic. And the other thing that I would say for strategic case study is, I think there's much more pre-scene application, or you're expected to know that a lot more, and similarly much more real world industry expectation. So if you suggested something at strategic case study that was just not appropriate for the industry, then it wouldn't bode well for that answer, you know. So you have to be a little sort of mini expert in your industry and apply the most. But it's the prioritization of points, I think, is the key one for me. I like this question. So if you pass strategic case study and become a member, what should we do next for going ahead to a higher level? Gosh, well, that's a hard question for me. When I got my first qualification, I then did a second tax qualification in the UK, but I understand that tax qualifications might be abhorrent to many of you. I mean, to be honest with you, I think CIMA and the case study and the qualification is fantastic. I also teach in the UK on a master's program. So a master's degree, and a lot of students find that interesting. What I would say is it's at the same level as your CIMA qualification, but it's tested in a different way, and it's a different way of study. So sometimes students find that interesting. A couple have gone on to do masters. But hand on heart, the best thing I think is always be interested. So I read a lot, and I listen to lots and lots of podcasts. And I think in my, definitely now that I teach, I've been teaching for about 6 years now, that's massively helped. And I almost wish I had done more of that when I was in my professional career. So I worked for Arthur Andersen, and then Deloitte, Ernst & Young a little bit, and then back to Deloitte for nearly 20 years in my professional career. So I do think maybe makes me sound old, but we're in an age where there's just so much information. I absolutely love some of the BBC podcasts. So Tech Tent is one that I think is fantastic for case study, and Business Matters is a great one. But if you want to look at something more formal, you know, you could think about a master's or an MBA, but it's the same type of stuff but tested in a different way, and therefore that brings different skills. But just work experience and keep going is good. So will you be providing step-by-step direction for preparation? Yes, if you're in the elite group, I tend to always, like I say, encourage you to do this gap analysis. And then depending on what your gap or weakness is, then make my recommendation about what you need to do in the next week. So your weaknesses might be lack of technical knowledge, it might be lack of pre-scene, it might be lack of real world industry knowledge, it might be the layout of your answer, it might be time management, it might be that your written style is not concise enough. And I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that have come across. They're the main ones. And then try to make a recommendation for that student, how they can move forward. And again, not every student has the same amount of time. So I always make general recommendations, and I try as much as possible to make specific recommendations. And as well as that, that would be coupled with, if you're on the mocks, the marker will always give you detailed feedback, and that coupled with the Viva answer will give you an indication of what you need to do as well. So go into the course with the expectation that it is going to be really iterative, and that your skills, it's a skills-based exam, are going to grow as you progress through the course, but you would be supported in that. And also I find students help each other as well. The office hours sessions are recorded too. That isn't something that we used to do, but then we found that it was valuable to students. So again, I just asked students if everyone is okay with that. We record the office hours, and then any notes that I take, I tend to annotate on screen depending on what students have asked me. Again, those notes are circulated as well. So the office hours are recorded and I upload those. So they're done pretty much right after the course, and any notes that I take that go along with that are uploaded. And as I said, if you're on the elite course, you can always message me if you're worried about anything, or if you have a question that didn't come up. Sometimes students send me questions for office hours in advance. That's always really helpful because I can pull something together. So if you are going to miss it in office hours, but you've a burning question, send it to me. Obviously we'll talk about it when you're not there, but you'll get the recording and that side of things. And will your mocks be marked even if you did them at a later date? Yes, that is my understanding, that they will all get marked. What I would say, if you do join elite, I will set what I would say is a little study program for deadlines for mocks, because a lot of students like to have a marked copy of their mock before the debrief. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. You still get a lot from the debriefs, but yeah, that it wouldn't matter if you were slightly later. I think the elite group pricing, though this is something that you would need to ask on the info group, is slightly more expensive, but it does give you the all access side of things, but all the pricing is there. How soon can you take the first mock? That's my favorite type of question. What I would recommend is that if you were on the elite group, don't take the first mock until we've had the first workshop, because I will set you up in detail about a suggested approach. Yeah. And I like to give you a suggested approach so you can try it out, and then you could say, yeah, that works for me, or aspects of that work for me, but I'm going to try something different. But I think you will get more from doing the first mock if you have been to the first workshop. If you are on the program where you are not coming to the elite group, but you're accessing all of the webinars, and again, students have been so successful doing that as well, then I would say watch the pre-scene and the industry analysis webinar first, and then do your first mock. So that would be my advice. So pre-scene, 2 webinars, an industry webinar before you do the first mock. And if you're joining the elite group, hang fire till we've had that first workshop session. Okay. Which course is most beneficial, elite or full access? It's a really good question, but it's a tricky one to answer because it depends on what the student needs. So the full access one, where you've got the mock marking and you've got the webinars and you've got the resources, if you were a self-motivated student and you've no particular areas of weakness, then that is an ideal and extremely, I have to say, cost-effective program. And Thomas didn't mention it, but we had 2 world number 1s. So we had the world number 1 student in November, and again in February. So very, very successful. So the webinars and the mock marking works, but I know those 2 students were very, very self-motivated. If you find that you have some weaknesses, or you're less sure, or even just less confident, or you know that you're not as motivated, then coming along to Elite is fantastic. It does cost a little bit more, but I've had students on the Elite program before that have said, this is the second time I'm sitting this course. I wish I'd come along to Elite the first time, because even within the first 1 or 2 workshops, they're saying, I can see what I did wrong last time. So it really, really depends where you're coming from and what would suit you. There's merits of both courses, and you have to decide what you need. I am sorry, I don't know the answer to this question. I do apologize. So you said, do FRM USA match for CIMA qualification for financial risk analytics? I do apologize. I don't know the answer to that one. So that's something that I'm going to have a look at to see if I can find out anything on that. So apologies for not knowing the answer to that one. Let me see if there's anything else in the Q&A. Do you have extra support for students who did exams 2 years ago? That is another great question, and a question that comes up quite a lot. So again, with the Elite group, which are the students that I see the most, so it may also apply to other students. I have students coming that might say they have had a career break, maybe due to other commitments or family commitments, and that they haven't studied for a while. And again, I find those students come with quite low confidence. And so we look at making sure, again, with that sort of more personalized study plan, what is the best way for them to get up to speed. So yes, I have worked with students who have had a gap and need a little bit more support. I often find that the support the student needs is more for their confidence. They haven't forgotten as much as they think they do. But the workshops are very, very participative, and we're all chatting around technical areas, industry areas, the question, and you learn from what other people are asking, but you always have that safety net of saying, you know, I haven't studied for a while, what could I do now? So it's a situation that loads of students have been in. Okay. So technical work experience for the last 2 years in those sectors. Yeah, it is tricky for work experience. I've had a couple of students in a similar position. I do think that having strategic case study and then being fully qualified will help for that. Previous students that I've had in a similar situation where they want to progress their career, they want to get some more work experience. A couple of them have done work in the voluntary sector. And then again, that experience has led on to a job in most cases. So I would say don't give up. Have a think about doing some volunteering in the voluntary sector as well. And I would say completing strategic case study and being CIMA qualified will also definitely help for that as well. For sure. Okay, any other questions? As always, you have asked good questions. Do you like the sound of the industry? It is really good. I find it really, really enjoyable. The other thing about the elite groups is I find that we have quite a diverse range of people in terms of their previous experience, their job roles that they're currently doing, and even how we all choose to live our lives. And that then provides loads of perspective on what we're looking at. And I always go away from the classes having learned a lot as well. So I do love the elite classes, and I think that group way of working is fantastic. Now, the video for this, Thomas will send out to you on Monday. So as far as I know, the link for that will be emailed to you. And then if you join up to one of the courses, then most of our information now is on the community space. I find that really helpful. So if you sign up, you will get your login to the community, and that I like it because it's all the reminders of where we're supposed to be when, as well as the chat. And those signing up to the elite course, we've left on all of the chats that we have had from May. So I have a load of news stories or comments or even my own Just Eat eating habits on there, and we've chatted around things as well on there too. So there's loads to look at, and it is a fab course. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time and attention today. I really, really hope that you found our little roadmap interesting. I hope you've had some practical advice as well in terms of studying, and I will keep my fingers crossed that I will see a lot of you on future webinars. I do love the drop-in webinars. They're like this: you ask loads of questions and you ask good questions, or maybe on the elite course as well. But thank you very much, and keep going. I can't tell you how worthwhile it is to get qualified and have your qualification. So without exception, students will always come back and say that. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, study hard, and hopefully lots of success for you in August 22 case. Take care. Bye-bye.